Hi everyone, I'm Shaylin Hugh with Reedsy. Today we're going to be talking about writing tips from famous authors. There are some really famous writing quotes out there from famous authors, and I mean they're famous authors, so you'd think that they've got some pretty useful things to say. So I've pulled 6 of my favorite quotes on writing that are, pieces of writing advice, and I just wanted to talk about why I think that it's such useful advice. So the first quote here is from William Faulkner. "You cannot swim for new horizons until you have lost sight of the shore." One thing I find really interesting about this piece of advice and this quote is that it actually contradicts the very common advice, write what you know, which I have never really abided by. I personally hate writing about myself. I think for the most part, the things that I've experienced within my own life, I'm just not interested in writing about them because I've already experienced it, and so I feel no interest or draw to writing about it again. Faulkner's advice encourages you to embrace writing outside your comfort zone in order to grow as a writer, and I do think that there's a lot of truth to that. It is hard to improve if you only ever write the same subject matter, and that subject matter is something that is already very close to you. Sometimes it's stepping outside of your boundaries, outside of your comfort zone, having to write a story where you have to maybe do some research, you have to really think very carefully, and it requires more effort because it's new to you. That will teach you so much. I think the pieces of writing I've learned the most for were the ones that I had to put so much thought into every sentence because it didn't just come naturally to me. And I think pushing yourself to write outside your comfort zone can produce some of your best writing. So contrary to the popular advice of writing what you know, I think that there's a lot of truth to Faulkner's words here. So the next tip is from Zadie Smith. I love Zadie Smith. She has a lot of really good quotes on writing and a lot of advice on writing, but the one that I pulled for this video is protect the time and space in which you write. Keep everybody away from it, even the people who are most important to you. I love this advice because it's so simple that it's easy to forget. It's so simple that we lose track of it and we don't do it. A lot of us don't protect the time we write. A lot of us don't see it as something special or sacred, and it can be really easy to get in a habit of viewing writing as a chore or writing while multitasking, with the TV on in the background, and seeing your writing as something that is worth protecting and prioritizing can be really special, especially since the start of the pandemic. More and more I've been trying to see my writing as like a kind of a sacred thing. It's something that I plan for and look forward to, rather than something I used to just write randomly at all random times during the day, and there was no sacredness to the process. But because it's one of the few things that I can do, it's like my main event that I go to, I've been really seeing my writing sessions and my writing time as something very special and something worth protecting, and it has honestly made me enjoy writing so much more. And so I think putting that effort into protecting your writing time can make the process of writing so much more enjoyable. So the next quote is from Isabelle Allende, and the quote is, "Show up, show up, show up, and after a while the muse shows up too." I really love the way that she frames this advice because I think it's a fresher and more truthful take on the common advice of just sit down and write even if you don't feel inspired. What she is saying instead is, if you make the effort, if you put effort into your writing even when you don't feel inspired, you will eventually be inspired. She's not saying, screw inspiration, you don't need inspiration to write. She's saying sometimes you need to write to be inspired, and I think that there's so much truth to that. Sometimes you have to force yourself to engage with your writing in order for your writing to then engage back with you. And I love her idea that if you commit to writing, then the inspiration will find you. She's not saying you don't need inspiration to write, she's saying sometimes you need to write to be inspired. So the next quote is from Tremain, and her advice goes like this: "In the planning stage of a book, don't plan the ending. It has to be earned by all that will go before it." This is a running theme in this video, but I love this advice because it contradicts common advice, and the common advice is know the end before you start writing. Now, of course, this works for many people, and I'm not saying if you like to know the end, stop doing that. But this advice really spoke to me and my process, and I like that she's kind of validating this other way of writing. I think for many people, writing and letting the end reveal itself as they write is more powerful. For me, if I plan the end before I start writing, as I'm writing, sometimes it feels like I'm just shoehorning the events into the story to force it towards this inevitable endpoint. But if I start writing without knowing where the story is going, eventually the story gets to a point where it feels like it's built up momentum, and then the end reveals itself, and then the story kind of just like snowballs towards the end. It feels like it can't go any other way. It feels so much more organic. And I also think it can just be so enjoyable to write when you don't know the end. I'm someone who kind of writes by the model that I like to be confused by my own writing. It sounds a little weird, but when I'm writing, I like to not really know what's going on, because it makes me more curious about the story. It makes me want to know what's going to happen. It forces me to problem solve more deeply as I write, and for me that leads to better writing. If you're struggling with your stories feeling unnatural or inorganic, this might be the advice for you. So the next quote is from Anton Chekhov. This was the first quote that I thought to put in this video when I was scripting it. It's a very famous quote, but it's such a good one that I wanted to talk about it. And it's the famous quote, "Don't tell me the moon is shining, show me the glint of light on broken glass." I had to include this because I think it is the best articulation of the show don't tell advice that there ever has been. In this advice, he really gets to the core of what show don't tell means. It's about enhancing the visceral quality of the story by showing us little details that can then paint a grander picture that are more exciting to read. It's about how observing the story more closely and finding little details throughout it can add so much power to a story. And then finally, we've got this quote from Toni Morrison. It is a great quote. It might be one that you've heard before, but it was also one that I just had to put in this video because it's so good. If there is a book that you want to read, but it hasn't been written yet, then you must write it. I love this quote so much because I think it's so true. The book that you will love the most is the book that you would love to read. The book that you wish was in the world. Ask yourself, like, what is my perfect novel? What would be the perfect novel for me that I would love reading? And then go out and write it. You will probably love that book. You will probably have so much passion for it because you're going to be bringing to life exactly what you wish you could read, exactly what you wish you could see. I used to write a lot of books that I don't think really fit this. I was writing books that I, weirdly enough, would probably not pick up off the shelf as a reader, which is very strange, and I don't know what compelled me to do that. And I think it was because I was compelled by my own story from the inside, but not from like an outside viewpoint. And it was hard to stay passionate about those stories in the long run. When I started writing books that were exactly to my taste, like they were my taste in books, but they didn't exactly exist yet, then I found a new passion for the project that was way beyond these other books that I think were not as well suited to me. So that is some famous advice from some famous writers, and I think it is all excellent advice. They clearly all know what they're talking about because they're very good writers, and that is why they are famous. Please let me know what your favorite quote or tip from a famous writer is. And maybe in the next video I'll feature some of your suggestions, some of your favorite quotes. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos from us. We've got new writing, editing, and publishing tips every Tuesday and Friday. Until next time.